They laughed when she pulled out the battered rifle with the ancient scope, calling it a museum piece from someone who probably learned to shoot at summer camp. But when the lights went out and the impossible challenge began, their laughter died in their throats. What happened next in that pitch-black range would rewrite everything they thought they knew about precision, skill, and the quiet woman they'd dismissed as yesterday's news. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of Blackstone Training Facility like a gray shroud, refusing to yield to the pale October sun that struggled through the overcast sky. Located 40 miles outside of Denver, Colorado, Blackstone had earned its reputation as the premier destination for military, contractors, law enforcement agencies, and elite shooting competitions. The facility sprawled across 800 acres of carefully maintained terrain, featuring everything from close-quarters combat houses to 1,000-yard precision ranges that challenged even the most seasoned marksmen. At precisely 7:30 in the morning, a dusty Ford pickup truck pulled through the main gate, its engine running with the reliable hum of a vehicle that had seen better days but refused to quit. The security guard in the booth barely glanced up from his coffee and newspaper as he waved the truck through, accustomed to the steady stream of shooters who arrived before dawn to claim the best lanes and optimal lighting conditions. Behind the wheel sat Elena Vasquez, a woman whose 43 years showed in the fine lines around her dark eyes and the silver threads that had begun to weave through her black hair. She wore a simple flannel shirt over faded jeans, both practical and comfortable, the kind of clothing chosen for function rather than fashion. Her hands on the steering wheel were steady and sure, calloused from years of work that required precision and patience in equal measure. Elena parked in the gravel lot near the main building, choosing a spot away from the cluster of expensive trucks and tactical vehicles that belonged to the other early arrivals. She sat for a moment in the quiet cab, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, gathering her thoughts for what lay ahead. Through the windshield, she could see other shooters unloading their equipment, their movements efficient and practiced as they prepared for whatever challenges the day might bring. She reached into the back seat and pulled forward a worn canvas rifle case, its olive drab color faded to a muted green-gray that spoke of decades of use. The case was secured with simple buckles and straps, nothing fancy or tactical about it, just functional protection for the contents within. Beside it sat a small canvas bag containing her shooting accessories, ammunition, and other necessities. The main building at Blackstone was a low-slung structure of concrete and steel, designed more for durability than aesthetics. Inside, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across walls lined with safety posters, range rules, and photographs of notable shooters who had trained at the facility over the years. The air carried the familiar scent of gun oil, cleaning solvents, and the faint, metallic tang that seemed to permeate every shooting facility, regardless of how well ventilated it might be. Behind the check-in counter stood Marcus Thompson, a retired Marine whose 20-year career had ended with an injury that kept him off active duty but hadn't diminished his passion for marksmanship. At 55, he maintained the bearing of a career military man, his gray hair cut short and his posture erect despite the early hour. He'd been working at Blackstone for 3 years, long enough to recognize the regulars and spot the newcomers who thought expensive equipment could substitute for skill and practice. Elena approached the counter with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly where she belonged, despite any evidence to the contrary. She set down her rifle case and pulled out a worn leather wallet, extracting her identification and range certification cards with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. "Morning," Marcus said, his voice carrying the rough edge of too many years of shouting orders over gunfire. "First time at Blackstone?" "Yes," Elena replied, her voice clear and steady. I'm here for the quarterly precision challenge. Marcus raised an eyebrow as he processed her paperwork. The quarterly precision challenge was Blackstone's premier shooting competition, drawing participants from across the country who came to test their skills against some of the most demanding courses of fire ever devised. The entry fee alone was steep enough to discourage casual participants, and the difficulty level had earned the competition a reputation that bordered on legendary among serious marksmen. "You're registered," he confirmed, checking his computer screen. "Elena Vasquez. Says here you're competing in the open precision category." "That's correct." Marcus glanced at her rifle case, noting its age and well-worn appearance. Most competitors arrived with cases that cost more than some people's monthly rent. Hard-sided tactical cases with foam cutouts, custom-fitted for their precision rifles. Elena's canvas case looked like it had served in at least 2 wars and several peacekeeping missions. "You'll be shooting with some serious hardware today," he said, not unkindly. "Some of these folks have rifles that cost more than most people's. Cars, custom everything, hand-loaded ammunition, optics that cost 5 figures. Elena nodded, unsurprised. She'd competed at facilities like this before, where money often spoke louder than skill, at least until the actual shooting began. "I'm sure they do." Marcus handed her a range badge and orientation packet. "Range safety briefing starts in 15 minutes. Then you'll have time to set up and zero your rifle before the competition begins. The precision course starts at 10:00 hours sharp." She clipped the badge to her shirt and tucked the packet under her arm. "Thank you." The briefing room was a sterile space with folding chairs arranged in neat rows facing a podium and a large screen for presentations. Elena chose a seat near the back, settling in with the patience of someone accustomed to waiting. Around her, other competitors filed in, their conversations a mixture of technical discussions about ballistics, wind conditions, and equipment modifications. Near the front of the room, 3 men dominated the conversation with the easy confidence of those accustomed to being the center of attention. Jake Morrison, at 34, was a former Army sniper whose discharge papers had led him directly into the lucrative world of military contracting. His blonde hair was cut in a style that split the difference between military regulation and civilian fashion, and his clothing bore the subtle logos of premium tactical gear manufacturers. Beside him sat David Chun, a 31-year-old former Marine whose precision shooting had earned him recognition in both military and civilian competitions. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his shooting jacket was custom-fitted with sponsor patches that read like a who's who of the firearms industry. He wore the kind of confidence that came from years of being told he was exceptional at something that mattered. The third member of their informal group was Ryan Walsh, 29 years old and blessed with the kind of natural talent that had made shooting seem effortless from the moment he first picked up a rifle. His brown hair was tousled in a way that looked casual, but probably required more effort than he'd ever admit, and his smile came easily, the expression of someone who'd rarely encountered a challenge he couldn't meet with natural ability and expensive equipment. "Did you see the course description?" Jake was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the room. 1,000-yard shots, moving targets, unknown distances. They're really trying to separate the pros from the weekend warriors this time. David nodded, adjusting the collar of his shooting jacket. "Good. I'm tired of competitions where you can buy your way to a decent score with the right equipment. This one's going to come down to pure skill." Ryan glanced around the room, his eyes cataloging the other competitors with the casual assessment of someone sizing up the competition. Most of these guys look serious enough. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Custom rifles, high-end optics, the works. Should be interesting to see who can actually deliver when it counts. His gaze swept past Elena without pausing, dismissing her as quickly as he might ignore a piece of furniture. Her aged rifle case and unremarkable appearance didn't register as worthy of consideration in a room full of tactical gear and expensive equipment. The range safety officer took the podium, a woman in her 40s whose bearing suggested extensive military experience. She began the mandatory briefing with the kind of efficiency that came from having delivered the same information hundreds of times, covering everything from basic safety protocols to the specific rules governing the day's competition. Elena listened with the attention of someone who understood that details mattered, that small oversights could lead to disqualification or worse. Around her, some competitors took notes while others leaned back in their chairs with the casual attitude of those who'd heard similar briefings many times before. The precision challenge consists of 3 phases, the safety officer explained, clicking through slides on the screen behind her. Phase 1 is static precision at known distances, ranging from 200 to 1,000 yards. Phase 2 introduces moving targets and unknown distances. Phase 3 is our new addition this year, which we're calling the Night Precision Challenge. A murmur ran through the room at this announcement. Night shooting was notoriously difficult, requiring specialized equipment and skills that many competitors had never developed. Most precision shooting competitions took place during daylight hours, when conditions were optimal and equipment advantages were most pronounced. The night challenge takes place in complete darkness, the safety officer continued. No ambient light, no artificial illumination except what you provide yourself. Targets will be placed at various distances and elevations, marked only by infrared signatures visible through night vision or thermal optics. Each competitor will have 30 minutes to engage 100 targets of varying sizes and distances. Ryan leaned forward in his chair, his casual confidence replaced by focused attention. 100 targets in 30 minutes? Incomplete. Darkness, Jake whistled softly under his breath. That's going to require some serious night vision equipment. The high-end thermal scopes, probably military-grade stuff. David was already calculating the requirements in his head. 18 seconds per target average, including target acquisition, range estimation, and engagement. That's assuming you don't miss, which would eat into your time for follow-up shots. The safety officer continued her briefing, covering the scoring system and rules of engagement, but the 3 men were already focused on the challenge ahead. Around them, other competitors showed varying degrees of concern about the night shooting requirement. Some had brought night vision equipment, others were clearly unprepared for shooting in complete darkness. Elena continued to listen without visible reaction, her expression calm and attentive. She'd expected something challenging when she'd registered for the competition, though the night shooting element was an interesting addition. Her rifle case sat beside her chair, giving no indication of whether she was prepared for such demanding conditions. After the briefing concluded, competitors filed out to collect their equipment and begin the setup process. The precision range at Blackstone was an impressive facility, with covered shooting positions extending out to 1,500 yards. Each position was equipped with adjustable rests, windage flags, and communication systems that allowed range officers to coordinate targets and scoring. Elena claimed position 17, roughly in the middle of the firing line. She set her rifle case on the bench and began the process of unpacking her equipment with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. The case's buckles opened with the soft sound of well-worn leather and metal, revealing contents that had been packed with military efficiency. The rifle that emerged from the case was a study in contrast to the expensive custom weapons being assembled around her. It was a Remington 700, a model that had been in production for decades and had served as the basis for countless military and police sniper rifles. But this particular example had clearly seen extensive use, its stock showing the nicks and scratches that came from years of field service. The most notable feature was the scope mounted on top, a piece of equipment that drew immediate attention from nearby competitors. It was a Leopold Mark IV, a design that had been state-of-the-art in the 1990s, but was now considered outdated by modern standards. The scope's finish was worn, the metal showing through the original coating in several places, and the adjustment turrets bore the marks of extensive use. At position 16, Jake caught sight of Elena's rifle as she completed her setup. He nudged David, who was adjusting his own precision rifle, a custom-built platform that had cost more than many people's annual salary. "Check out Grandma's setup, Jake." Saad, his voice pitched low but not low enough to avoid carrying to nearby positions. "Is that scope older than she is?" David glanced over, taking in the aged rifle and worn optics with the expression of someone looking at a museum display. "That's a Mark IV. My dad had one of those back in the day. They stopped making them when better technology came along." Ryan, assembling his own rifle at position 15, looked up from his work long enough to assess Elena's equipment. His rifle was a masterpiece of modern engineering, built by a custom shop that catered to professional shooters and serious competitors. The scope mounted on top was a German-made precision optic that cost more than most people's monthly rent, featuring every technological advancement available to civilian shooters. "Someone should tell her this isn't a vintage rifle competition," Ryan said, his comment drawing chuckles from several nearby competitors. "That scope probably has more history than accuracy at this point." Elena continued her setup without acknowledging the comments, though it was clear she could hear every word. She mounted the rifle in the provided rest and began the process of checking her zero, making small adjustments with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd performed this routine thousands of times. Her shooting bag was as unremarkable as everything else in her kit, a simple canvas affair that contained her ammunition, tools, and accessories. The cartridges she loaded into her rifle were factory ammunition, nothing custom or hand-loaded. Just reliable hunting rounds that could be purchased at any sporting goods store. Jake shook his head as he watched her preparation routine. Factory ammo, too. She's either got a lot of confidence or no idea what she's gotten herself into. The morning progressed with competitors fine-tuning their equipment and confirming their zeros at various distances. Elena's rifle performed consistently, grouping shots with the kind of precision that spoke well of both the rifle's maintenance and the shooter's skill. But her equipment remained the subject of commentary from those around her. "I mean, there's something to be said for keeping things simple," David conceded as he watched Elena's shooting through a spotting scope. "But when you're competing against this level of equipment and skill, you need every advantage you can get." Ryan nodded toward his own rifle, which represented the absolute pinnacle of civilian precision shooting technology. "My setup can measure environmental conditions automatically, calculate ballistic solutions in real time, and adjust for everything from temperature to humidity. That old scope probably doesn't even have target turrets." As the morning wore on, more competitors arrived and began their own preparation routines. The range filled with the sounds of rifle bolts cycling, the soft thump of bullets striking distant targets, and the constant murmur of technical discussions about wind conditions, atmospheric pressure, and ballistic coefficients. Elena completed her zero confirmation and settled in to observe the other competitors, taking note of their equipment and shooting styles with the quiet attention of someone who understood that information was as valuable as ammunition. She watched Jake work through a complex shooting routine that involved multiple equipment checks and environmental measurements before each shot. David's approach was more systematic, relying on a ballistic computer that could calculate precise firing solutions based on input data about range, wind, temperature, and ammunition characteristics. His shots were methodical and precise, each one following a detailed checklist that left nothing to chance. Ryan's style was more intuitive, relying on natural ability and feel to make adjustments that others accomplished with mechanical aids. His shooting was fluid and confident, the expression of someone who'd been blessed with exceptional natural talent and had refined it through years of practice and competition. As the time for the first phase of competition approached, the atmosphere on the range grew more focused. Conversations became quieter and more technical. Competitors fine-tuned their equipment one final time, and range officers began their final safety checks and briefings. Elena sat quietly at her position, her rifle ready and her equipment organized with military precision. She'd drawn some curious glances from other competitors, most of whom seemed to view her as either a nostalgic throwback or a serious underdog who'd wandered into the wrong competition. The range officer's voice crackled through the communication system, announcing the beginning of the first phase of competition. Shooters, prepare for the precision challenge. First relay will engage. Targets at known distances from 200 to 1,000 yards. You will have 2 hours to complete the course of fire. Scoring will be based on accuracy and consistency across all distance ranges. Elena shouldered her rifle and settled into a comfortable shooting position, her movements economical and practiced. Through her old scope, the distant targets appeared clear and steady, the optics performing exactly as they had for the past 2 decades of faithful service. Around her, competitors made final adjustments to their high-tech equipment, checking displays, confirming atmospheric readings, and updating ballistic calculations. The contrast between their modern approach and Elena's simple, direct method was stark. But as the first commands echoed across the range and rifles began to fire, it became clear that competition shooting was ultimately about putting bullets where they needed to go, regardless of how much technology assisted the process. Elena's first shot struck the 200-yard target with the kind of precision that spoke to fundamental shooting skills that no amount of equipment could replace. Jake, shooting from the position next to her, glanced over after hearing her shot. Through his spotting scope, he could see her bullet hole precisely centered in the target's scoring ring. He shook his head slightly, surprised despite himself. "Lucky shot," he muttered, returning his attention to his own target and the complex calculations required by his ballistic computer. But as the morning progressed and Elena continued to place shot after shot exactly where she intended them to go, it became increasingly difficult to dismiss her performance as mere luck. Her aged rifle and obsolete scope were producing results that matched or exceeded those achieved by equipment costing 10 times as much. The other competitors began to take notice, their casual dismissal slowly replaced by a grudging respect for consistency they couldn't ignore, whatever else might be said about Elena's equipment choices. She was clearly a shooter of considerable skill. By the time the first phase concluded, Elena had posted a score that placed her in the top 5 competitors, ahead of several shooters with significantly more expensive equipment. Her performance was noted by the range officers who'd seen enough competitions to recognize when someone was shooting well above their apparent equipment limitations. During the break between phases, competitors gathered around the scoring board to check their standings and compare results. Elena's name near the top of the list drew comments and speculation from those who dismissed her earlier in the day. "She's got to be shooting some serious hand loads," one competitor suggested. "No way she's getting that kind of consistency with factory ammunition. Maybe she's got some custom work done on that old rifle," another added. "Internal modifications that aren't visible from the outside." Jake studied the scores with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle that didn't quite make sense. "She's shooting clean through the entire course. No dropped points, no called flyers. That's professional level consistency." David nodded, his own score reflecting the kind of performance expected from someone with his equipment and experience. But Elena's results suggested capabilities that her appearance and equipment didn't seem to support. "The real test will be the moving targets," Ryan said, checking his own standing on the board. "That's where equipment advantages really start to matter. Fast target acquisition, precise tracking, the ability to make quick adjustments for changing conditions." As the competitors prepared for the second phase of the competition, the morning mist had finally yielded to a pale autumn sun that cast long shadows across the range. The moving target course at Blackstone was an engineering marvel, featuring targets that appeared and disappeared at various distances and angles, requiring shooters to demonstrate not just accuracy, but speed and adaptability. Elena checked her rifle and ammunition supply, making the same methodical preparations she'd employed throughout the morning. Her equipment remained unchanged, the aged rifle and worn scope that had drawn so much commentary from the other competitors. But as she settled into position for the second phase, there was something in her posture and preparation that suggested the real competition was just beginning. The morning had been about establishing baselines and understanding the course. What came next would reveal who could adapt, who could perform under pressure, and who could maintain precision when the conditions became more demanding. The range. Officer's voice crackled through the communication system once again, announcing the beginning of Phase 2. Elena shouldered her rifle and prepared to demonstrate that sometimes the most important equipment a shooter could possess couldn't be purchased at any price. Around her, expensive rifles and high-tech optics prepared to engage the challenging course ahead. But as the first moving targets began their unpredictable dance across the range, it would become clear that precision shooting was ultimately about the person behind the rifle, not the technology in front of them. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the mist and revealing a shooting range where assumptions were about to collide with reality in ways that would surprise everyone present, most especially the three men who'd spent the morning questioning whether Elena belonged there at all. The second phase of the competition transformed the Blackstone Range into a theater of controlled chaos. Moving targets emerged from concealed positions at unpredictable intervals, swinging across open ground on cables, popping up from hidden bunkers, and sliding along rails at varying speeds and distances. The course designers had created a challenge that tested not just accuracy, but the ability to think quickly, adapt to changing conditions, and maintain composure under pressure. Elena adjusted her position slightly, settling the well-worn stock of her Remington against her shoulder with the familiarity of decades of practice. The morning sun had climbed higher, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow across the range that would challenge even the most sophisticated optics. Through her aged Leupold scope, she surveyed the course ahead, noting the various target mechanisms and calculating probable engagement angles. At position 15, Ryan Walsh was making final adjustments to his custom rifle, a precision instrument that represented the absolute pinnacle of civilian shooting technology. His scope featured an integrated ballistic computer capable of calculating firing solutions in real time, compensating for everything from wind speed to the Coriolis effect. The rifle itself was a masterpiece of engineering, with a custom action that had been hand-fitted by master gunsmiths and a barrel that had cost more than most people's monthly salary. "This is where the real shooting begins," Ryan said to David Chun, who occupied the adjacent position. "Static targets are one thing, but moving targets separate the amateurs from the professionals." David nodded while checking his own equipment, a rifle system that featured modular components allowing for rapid reconfiguration based on shooting conditions. His scope included multiple reticle options and could interface with a handheld ballistic computer that processed environmental data in real time. The entire system had been designed for military contractors and competitive shooters who demanded absolute precision under varying conditions. "The key is target acquisition speed," David replied, cycling his rifle's action to confirm smooth operation. "My tracking system can lock onto moving targets and predict their path. It's like having a targeting computer from a fighter jet." Jake Morrison, shooting from position 14, was equally confident in his equipment's capabilities. His rifle featured an adjustable stock and trigger system that could be modified during competition to optimize performance for different target types. The scope mounted above included range-finding capabilities and could interface with wind sensors. Positioned throughout the range. "Elena's going to struggle here," Jake said, glancing down the line toward her position. "That old scope doesn't have the target tracking capabilities needed for fast-moving targets. She'd be trying to lead targets manually while we're getting computer-assisted solutions." The range officer's voice cut through the morning air with crisp authority. "Shooters, the moving target phase will commence in 2 minutes. Each competitor will engage targets as they appear over a 30-minute period. Scoring is based on hits versus misses, with bonus points for targets engaged at longer distances or higher speeds." Elena made one final check of her ammunition supply, confirming that each cartridge was properly seated in her shooting bag. For quick access, her movements were economical and practiced, showing none of the nervous energy that affected some competitors before challenging phases. She had loaded her rifle with 5 rounds of factory ammunition, the same hunting cartridges that had drawn commentary throughout the morning. The first target appeared without warning, a steel silhouette that swung across an opening at 400 yards. Ryan's high-tech scope immediately acquired the target, calculating its speed and trajectory while displaying a predicted intercept point. He fired within 3 seconds of the target's appearance, his bullet striking the steel with a satisfying ring that echoed across the range. "Clean hit," David observed, impressed by the speed of engagement. "That's the advantage of modern target acquisition systems." Elena watched the same target through her worn scope, noting its speed and arc of travel. When it appeared for the second time, she tracked its movement smoothly, leading it by what appeared to be pure instinct before firing. Her bullet struck the target near its center, producing the same metallic ring that marked a successful engagement. Jake raised an eyebrow at the sound. Lucky guess on the lead time. But as more targets appeared across the range, Elena's performance began to establish a pattern that was difficult to dismiss as luck. A pop-up target at 600 yards emerged for only 4 seconds before disappearing. Elena's shot found its mark in the narrow window of opportunity. A sliding target at 800 yards moved laterally across a 30-foot opening. Her bullet intercepted it perfectly, striking center mass as it reached maximum speed. David was beginning to notice Elena's consistent performance through his peripheral vision while engaging targets of his own. Her shooting rhythm was different from the other competitors, more fluid and instinctive, where theirs was methodical and technology-assisted. She seemed to anticipate target movements rather than react to them, firing with a confidence that suggested complete familiarity with trajectory calculations that others accomplished through electronic assistance. "She's shooting clean through this phase too," David said to Ryan during a brief lull in target presentations. "No misses, no hesitation. How is she calculating lead times that fast without a ballistic computer?" Ryan shook his head while reloading his rifle. "Has to be experience with that particular rifle and load combination. She's probably been shooting the same setup for years and knows its ballistics by heart." A new target appeared that challenged this theory. It was a small steel plate, roughly 8 inches in diameter, that swung on a cable at 300 yards. The target moved in an irregular pattern, changing direction unpredictably as wind currents affected its motion. Ryan's sophisticated tracking system struggled to establish a firing solution for such erratic movement. Elena watched the target through her scope for nearly 10 seconds, studying its motion pattern and calculating the complex variables involved in intercepting something moving in 3 dimensions. When she fired, her bullet struck the plate dead center, stopping its movement completely and producing a clear ring that carried across the entire range. Jake lowered his rifle and stared down the line toward Elena's position. That shot was impossible. That target was moving in a completely random pattern. "Not random," Elena said quietly, her voice carrying just far enough to reach the adjacent shooting positions. predictable if you understand physics. It was the first time she had spoken during the competition, and her tone carried the quiet confidence of someone stating a simple fact rather than making a boast. She reloaded her rifle with the same methodical precision she had demonstrated throughout the morning, showing no signs of stress or fatigue despite the demanding nature of the course. The next series of targets tested the limits of both equipment and skill. Multiple targets appeared simultaneously at different ranges and angles, requiring shooters to prioritize engagements and manage their time efficiently. Ryan's computer-assisted system excelled at such challenges, providing real-time analysis of which targets offered the best scoring opportunities. Elena approached the multiple target scenario differently. Rather than relying on electronic analysis, she seemed to process the tactical situation intuitively, engaging targets in an order that maximized her scoring potential while accounting for the mechanical limitations of her bolt-action rifle. Her shots came in rapid succession, each one finding its mark with the kind of precision that suggested she had anticipated the target presentation sequence. "She's shooting faster than her equipment should allow," David observed, timing Elena's engagement sequence. A bolt-action rifle has inherent limitations for rapid target engagement, but she's cycling that action like it's an automatic weapon. Jake was equally puzzled by Elena's performance. The bolt manipulation alone should slow her down enough to miss opportunities on time-sensitive targets. But she's engaging everything that appears. The explanation became apparent to those who watched Elena's technique closely. Her bolt manipulation was performed with mechanical precision, each movement economical and purposeful. She operated the rifle's action during her natural respiratory pause between shots, minimizing the time between target acquisitions. Her shooting position remained stable throughout the process, eliminating the need to re-establish sight picture after each shot. More importantly, Elena seemed to anticipate target presentations based on subtle cues that others missed. She would begin transitioning to a new engagement area moments before targets appeared, suggesting either exceptional pattern recognition or experience with similar challenges. Her aged scope tracked smoothly across the range, its worn but functional mechanism proving adequate for the demanding requirements of competitive shooting. As the moving target phase progressed, other competitors began to pay closer attention to Elena's performance. Her consistent success with equipment that appeared inadequate for the challenge was becoming impossible to ignore. Range officers monitoring the competition through spotting scopes confirmed that she was maintaining perfect accuracy while engaging targets as quickly as the fastest computer-assisted systems. "What's her background?" asked a competitor from Position 20, a former police sniper who had invested heavily in modern equipment for the competition. "No one shoots like that without serious training." Jake shrugged, but his casual dismissal of Elena was becoming harder to maintain. Could be military, could be law enforcement. Maybe she's been shooting competitively for years with the same equipment and knows it inside and out. Or maybe, David suggested quietly, we've been making assumptions about what modern equipment can do that experience can't match. The thought was uncomfortable for competitors who had invested thousands of dollars in technology designed to provide competitive advantages. The possibility that skill and experience could overcome technological superiority challenged fundamental assumptions about modern precision shooting. Elena continued her methodical progress through the course, engaging targets with a consistency that bordered on mechanical precision. Her shooting rhythm never varied, her position remained stable, and her aged equipment performed exactly as required, despite its apparent technological disadvantages. She wasted no motion, used no unnecessary equipment checks, and showed no signs of the stress that affected other competitors as the phase grew more challenging. A particularly difficult target sequence appeared near the end of the phase, designed to test the absolute limits of both equipment and shooter capability. 3 targets appeared simultaneously at different ranges, moved at different speeds, and remained visible for only brief windows before disappearing. The sequence required split-second decision-making and flawless execution to achieve maximum points. Ryan's sophisticated system analyzed the target presentation and recommended an engagement sequence based on scoring potential and probability of success. He followed the computer's guidance, achieving 2 solid hits and 1 marginal score that would count for partial points. David approached the same sequence more intuitively, relying on his experience to prioritize targets based on his assessment of their difficulty and point value. His 3 shots resulted in 2 clean hits and 1 complete miss, a respectable performance given the challenging nature of the presentation. Elena engaged the same target sequence with what appeared to be supernatural precision. Her 3 shots came in rapid succession, each one timed perfectly to intercept its intended target at the optimal moment. All 3 targets rang with the clear sound of center hits, a performance that drew audible reactions from other competitors and range officials. "That's not possible," Jake said, lowering his rifle and staring toward Elena's position. 3 moving targets at different ranges, different speeds, different trajectories. No one engages that sequence clean without computer assistance. Elena ejected her empty brass and reloaded with the same unhurried precision she had maintained throughout the competition. "Physics doesn't change because targets move," she said simply. "Bullets follow predictable paths if you understand the variables." The statement hung in the air like a challenge to everything the other competitors believed about modern shooting. Technology. The implication that complex ballistic calculations could be performed mentally in real time during rapid target engagements seemed to contradict everything they had learned about the necessity of technological assistance for precision shooting. As the moving target phase concluded, competitors began checking preliminary scores and comparing their performance against others in the field. Elena's results continued to place her among the top performers, ahead of shooters with equipment that cost multiples of her simple rifle and aged scope combination. "She has to be shooting custom loads," Ryan insisted, studying the scoreboard with growing frustration. "There's no way factory ammunition is producing that kind of consistency across varying ranges and conditions." David was less certain. He had observed Elena's shooting technique closely enough to recognize that her equipment, while aged, was being operated at absolute peak of its capability. Maybe the question isn't what she's shooting, but how she learned to shoot. The conversation was interrupted by the range officer's announcement of the final phase. "Competitors, prepare for the Night Precision Challenge. The range will be darkened completely in 30 minutes. Targets will be marked only by infrared signatures. You will have 30 minutes to engage 100 targets of varying sizes and distances." The announcement created immediate activity as competitors began unpacking night vision equipment and thermal optics. High-end night vision scopes emerged from protective cases, along with infrared illuminators, thermal imaging devices, and other specialized equipment designed for low-light shooting conditions. Elena remained at her position, making no move to unpack additional equipment or modify her rifle configuration. Her aged scope remained mounted as it had throughout the day, showing no signs of night vision capability or thermal imaging features. "She's got to have night vision equipment in that bag," Jake said, watching Elena's position for signs of equipment changes. No one can engage targets in complete darkness without technological assistance. But as Elena continued her methodical preparation routine without adding any equipment to her basic rifle setup, it became clear that she intended to attempt the Night Precision Challenge with the same aged scope that had served her throughout the day. David shook his head in disbelief. "That scope doesn't have night vision capability. It's a conventional daylight optic from the 1990s. She can't possibly think she can engage targets in complete darkness with equipment designed for daylight use." Ryan was already mounting his thermal imaging scope, a sophisticated device that could detect heat signatures in complete darkness and display them with crystal clarity. She must be planning to forfeit this phase. There's no shame in recognizing equipment limitations, but Elena showed no signs of preparation for forfeit or withdrawal. She checked her ammunition supply once more, confirmed her rifle's zero, and settled into a comfortable shooting position as other competitors completed their equipment modifications. Her calm preparation suggested confidence rather than resignation. The range began its transformation as daylight faded and artificial lighting was systematically extinguished. Within minutes, the shooting positions were plunged into absolute darkness, the kind of complete light absence that challenged human vision beyond its natural capabilities. Emergency lighting remained active in designated safety areas, but the range itself became a void where even the closest targets disappeared from view. Competitors activated their night vision and thermal imaging equipment, transforming the darkness into a green-tinted artificial daylight populated by heat signatures and infrared markers. The technology was impressive, providing clear target identification and precise ranging capabilities that made accurate shooting possible despite the absence of natural light. Elena remained in position behind her unmodified rifle, peering through a scope that was now completely useless in conventional terms. The aged Leupold had no night vision capability, no thermal imaging features, and no way to detect the infrared signatures that marked targets throughout the range. "This is insane," Jake whispered, his voice carrying in the darkness despite his attempt at quiet observation. "She's going to attempt this phase with a daylight scope in complete darkness." The first infrared targets activated, their heat signatures becoming visible to those equipped with appropriate technology. Ryan acquired his first target immediately, the thermal scope displaying the clear image of a steel silhouette at 400 yards. His shot rang out in the darkness, followed by the metallic clang of a successful hit. David engaged his first target moments later, his night vision scope providing adequate visibility for accurate shooting. The green-tinted world of electronically enhanced vision made target identification straightforward, if somewhat artificial in appearance. Elena remained motionless behind her rifle, the scope that had served her faithfully throughout the day now apparently useless in the absolute darkness. Other competitors began their systematic engagement of targets, the sound of rifle fire echoing across the range as expensive night vision equipment proved its worth. But then something unexpected happened. Elena's rifle spoke in the darkness. The muzzle flashed briefly illuminating her position before being swallowed by the night. The sound of her bullet striking a distant target carried clearly across the range, indicating a successful hit on a target she could not possibly have seen through conventional means. Jake paused in his own shooting sequence, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. How did she even know where to aim? Elena's second shot followed shortly after, again resulting in the distinctive sound of bullet meeting steel. Then a third and a fourth, each one finding its mark in the darkness with precision that defied explanation. "She can't be hitting targets she can't see," David said, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty. "It's physically impossible without night vision equipment." But Elena continued firing at a steady pace, each shot followed by the confirmation of a successful hit. Her shooting rhythm was methodical and consistent, suggesting systematic target engagement rather than random shooting. In the darkness, the explanation for her impossible performance began to emerge as other competitors noticed the pattern in her shooting. Elena was not relying on visual target acquisition through her scope. Instead, she was using a combination of techniques that had been largely forgotten in the age of technological assistance. Her years of experience had taught her to read the subtle environmental cues that most shooters ignored. The barely perceptible air currents that indicated target movement, the faint sounds of mechanical target systems activating, the tiny variations in ambient temperature that marked infrared signatures even without thermal imaging equipment. More importantly, Elena was applying decades of knowledge about the range itself. Her morning observation of target positions and mechanisms was paying dividends now, as she engaged targets based on memory and systematic progression rather than real-time visual acquisition. She memorized the entire course, Ryan realized, pausing in his own shooting to listen to Elena's consistent engagement rhythm. She's shooting targets based on position memory, not visual acquisition. The technique was impressive, but seemed inadequate for the complexity of the night precision challenge. The course featured 100 targets at varying distances and elevations, many positioned in locations that had not been visible during daylight hours. Memory alone could not account for the precision Elena was demonstrating. As the night phase progressed, Elena's performance became increasingly difficult to explain through conventional understanding of marksmanship principles. She was engaging targets with the same accuracy she had demonstrated during daylight conditions, despite the complete absence of visual confirmation through her scope. "Listen to her shooting rhythm," David said quietly. "It's too consistent, too precise. She's not guessing or estimating. She knows exactly where those targets are located." The observation was accurate but raised more questions than it answered. Elena's engagement sequence suggested target acquisition capabilities that exceeded those provided by the expensive night vision equipment used by other competitors. She was shooting faster than technology-assisted systems while maintaining perfect accuracy. Jake lowered his rifle and tried to observe Elena's technique in the darkness. She's not using any artificial illumination, no laser designators, no infrared pointers. How is she identifying targets that precisely? The answer lay in skills that had been developed long before night vision technology became available to civilian shooters. Elena was applying techniques learned through years of shooting in conditions where technological assistance was not available, relying on natural human capabilities that most modern shooters had never developed. Her hearing was trained to detect the subtle mechanical sounds that preceded target activation. Her sense of spatial awareness allowed her to maintain precise orientation despite the disorienting effects of complete darkness. Her muscle memory enabled accurate rifle manipulation without visual confirmation of sight picture or target alignment. Most importantly, Elena possessed an understanding of ballistic principles that allowed her to calculate precise firing solutions mentally without the electronic assistance that other competitors relied upon. She was performing complex trigonometric calculations in real time, accounting for range, windage, elevation, and target movement using mathematical relationships she had internalized through decades of practice. "She's shooting like a machine," Ryan observed, timing Elena's engagement sequence. "Consistent intervals, perfect accuracy, no wasted motion. It's like she's following a predetermined program." The comparison was more accurate than Ryan realized. Elena was indeed following a program, but one written by years of experience rather than computer algorithms. Her systematic approach to the night precision challenge reflected training and capabilities that predated the technological solutions other competitors relied upon. As the 30-minute phase progressed, Elena's shooting continued with mechanical precision. Each target fell to her aged rifle and worn scope, despite the impossible conditions and apparent equipment inadequacy. Her performance was becoming legendary even as it occurred, witnessed by competitors and range officials who struggled to understand what they were observing. The Night Precision Challenge had been designed to showcase the capabilities of modern shooting technology, to demonstrate the advantages provided by thermal imaging and night vision equipment. Instead, it was becoming a demonstration of skills that transcended technological assistance, a reminder that the most important component of any shooting system remained the person behind the rifle. Elena's rifle fell silent as the final target. engaged, her systematic progression through the course complete. Around her, other competitors continued their own engagement sequences, using expensive equipment to achieve results that she had accomplished with technology that predated their birth. The range officer's voice cut through the darkness with professional calm. Ceasefire. Night precision challenge complete. Range lights activating in 30 seconds. As artificial illumination returned to the range, competitors began to process what they had witnessed. Elena sat calmly behind her unmodified rifle, her equipment unchanged from the morning setup. Her ammunition bag was nearly empty, indicating successful engagement of targets throughout the challenging phase. The implications of her performance were only beginning to register as preliminary scores became available and confirmed what everyone had observed. Elena had engaged all 100 targets successfully, achieving perfect accuracy under conditions that had challenged the most sophisticated equipment available to civilian shooters. "That's not possible," Jake said, staring at the score display with disbelief. "No one shoots clean through the night precision challenge. The course is designed to test equipment limits." David was equally stunned by the results. She outperformed thermal imaging scopes with a 40-year-old daylight optic. That defies everything we understand about precision shooting technology. But Elena's performance was undeniable, witnessed by too many observers and confirmed by too many target impacts to be dismissed as error or luck. She had accomplished something that challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between equipment and capability in precision shooting. As competitors began securing their equipment and preparing for the scoring announcement, Elena remained at her position with the same calm composure she had maintained throughout the day. Her aged rifle and worn scope had proven adequate for challenges that were supposed to require the latest technological advances. The day's competition was concluding, but the lessons it had taught were just beginning to be understood by those who had witnessed Elena's impossible performance. The silence that followed the completion of the Night Precision Challenge was unlike anything the Blackstone Training Facility had experienced during its years of hosting elite competitions. Range officers moved through their post-competition routines with mechanical efficiency, but their usual professional demeanor carried an undercurrent of bewilderment that they struggled to conceal. The electronic scoring systems were processing data that challenged their programming parameters, generating results that would require verification and review before official announcement. Elena methodically cleaned her rifle with the same unhurried precision she had demonstrated throughout the day. Her cleaning kit was as unremarkable as everything else in her equipment collection, consisting of basic tools and solvents that could be purchased at any sporting goods store. She worked with practiced efficiency, running patches through the barrel and wiping down external surfaces that had accumulated the inevitable residue of a day's worth of precision shooting. At the adjacent shooting positions, competitors were securing their own equipment with considerably less composure. The expensive rifles and sophisticated optics that had seemed so impressive during the morning setup now appeared somehow inadequate, their technological advantages having failed to provide the expected competitive edge. Jake Morrison sat in his shooting chair with his custom rifle across his knees, staring at the distant targets that Elena had engaged with impossible accuracy during the darkness challenge. His ballistic computer still displayed environmental data and firing solutions that had guided his own performance, but the technology that had once seemed so advanced now felt like a crutch that had prevented him from developing more fundamental skills. "I don't understand what we just witnessed," Jake said finally, his voice carrying none of the casual confidence that had characterized his earlier commentary. "She engaged targets in complete darkness with a scope that has no night vision capability. That's not just impressive shooting, it's physically impossible." David Chun was performing his own equipment maintenance with movements that lacked their usual purposeful efficiency. His modular rifle system, with its multiple configuration options and computer-assisted targeting, had performed exactly as designed throughout the competition. But Elena's results suggested that technological sophistication was not the determining factor in precision shooting that he had always believed it to be. Maybe impossible isn't the right word, David said thoughtfully. Maybe we just don't understand the full range of what's possible with sufficient skill and experience. Ryan Walsh had completed securing his thermal imaging scope in its protective case, but he remained seated behind his shooting position with the expression of someone trying to process information that didn't fit his understanding of the world. His equipment represented the absolute pinnacle of civilian shooting technology, capable of detecting heat signatures and providing targeting solutions that exceeded the capabilities of many military systems. She outperformed thermal imaging with a daylight scope, Ryan said, as if stating the facts aloud might help him understand their implications. She engaged targets faster than computer-assisted systems while maintaining perfect accuracy. There has to be an explanation. The explanation, when it came, arrived in the form of Colonel Sarah Martinez, who approached Elena's shooting position with the measured gait of someone accustomed to command authority. At 58, Martinez carried herself with the bearing of a career military officer whose service had taken her to places that didn't appear on conventional maps. Her uniform was field-ready rather than ceremonial, and her presence at a civilian shooting competition was unusual enough to draw attention from other participants. "Sergeant Major Vasquez," Martinez said, her voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made people pay attention without requiring increased volume. "It's been a long time." Elena looked up from her rifle cleaning, recognizing the voice before she saw the speaker. "Colonel Martinez, I didn't expect to see you here." "The shooting community is smaller than most people realize," Martinez replied, "especially when someone demonstrates the kind of capabilities you've shown today." The conversation was conducted in the matter-of-fact tone that military professionals used when discussing operational matters, but the implications were not lost on the civilian competitors who found themselves within listening range. Elena's military rank had been revealed, along with the suggestion that her background included experiences that went beyond conventional training. Martinez pulled up a chair and settled beside Elena's position with the casual familiarity of someone who had shared foxholes and forward operating bases with the woman beside her. "How long since you've been out?" 18 months, Elena replied, continuing her methodical rifle maintenance. "Civilian contractor status was finalized last year after the Medical Review Board cleared me for unrestricted activity." "And you decided to spend your time embarrassing weekend warriors at shooting competitions?" Elena paused in her cleaning routine and looked directly at Martinez. "The invitation said it was open to all qualified shooters. I qualified." Martinez nodded, understanding the deeper implications of Elena's simple statement. The transition from military to civilian life was challenging for all veterans, but particularly difficult for those whose specialized skills had no direct civilian equivalent. Precision shooting competitions provided one of the few venues where such capabilities could be exercised legally and safely. Jake had been listening to the exchange with growing awareness that his assumptions about Elena's background had been fundamentally incorrect. "Sergeant Major is a pretty high rank, isn't it?" Martinez turned her attention to the younger man with the patient expression of someone explaining basic concepts to a new recruit. "Sergeant Major is the highest enlisted rank in the Army. It typically requires at least 15 years of service and exceptional performance in increasingly responsible positions." "What was her specialty?" David asked, his equipment maintenance forgotten as he focused on the conversation unfolding nearby. "Sergeant Major Vasquez was a sniper instructor at the Army Marksmanship Unit for 12 years, Martinez replied. "Before that, she served with the 75th Ranger Regiment in Afghanistan and Iraq. Her military occupational specialty was precision shooting, with additional qualifications in advanced marksmanship instruction and combat leadership." The information settled over the group like a heavy blanket, explaining everything they had witnessed while simultaneously raising new questions about the woman who had so thoroughly outperformed their expensive equipment and technological advantages. Ryan processed the revelation with the expression of someone discovering that his understanding of the world had been incomplete. A sniper instructor. That explains the shooting, but not the night vision capabilities. Even military snipers use night vision equipment for dark operations. Elena finished cleaning her rifle and began packing her equipment with the same methodical precision she had demonstrated throughout the day. Night vision equipment is useful when it's available and functional. But equipment fails, batteries die, and lenses break. The mission continues regardless of technological limitations. Martinez nodded in confirmation. Sergeant Major Vasquez trained snipers to operate in conditions where equipment failure was not just possible but probable. Her students learned to engage targets using techniques that predated night vision technology by decades. What kind of techniques? Jake asked, his professional curiosity overcoming his embarrassment at having underestimated Elena so completely. Elena shouldered her rifle case and turned to face the three men who had spent the morning questioning her presence at the competition. Sound discipline, environmental awareness, spatial memory, ballistic calculation, and patience. The same skills that snipers have used for over a century, before electronics made thinking optional. The explanation was delivered without arrogance or condescension, simply a statement of fact from someone who had mastered capabilities that most modern shooters never developed. But the implications were profound for competitors who had invested heavily in technology designed to replace human skill with electronic assistance. You memorized the entire target layout during the morning observation period, David said, understanding beginning to dawn. Then used sound cues and environmental indicators to engage targets systematically during the night phase. Environmental awareness is a learnable skill, Elena confirmed. Wind patterns, temperature variations, mechanical sounds, spatial relationships. Most shooters ignore environmental data because their equipment processes it electronically. But the environment provides all the information needed for accurate shooting if you know how to interpret it. Martinez stood and straightened her uniform with the unconscious precision of someone for whom military bearing was second nature. Sergeant Major Vasquez holds the Army record for long-range precision shooting in adverse conditions. She's qualified on every sniper weapon system used by U.S. forces over the past 20 years. Her students have served in every major conflict zone since 2001. The statistics were impressive, but they only hinted at the depth of experience that Elena had accumulated through her military career. Her service record included deployments to combat zones where precision shooting was not a competition, but a matter of survival for herself and the soldiers she supported. How many confirmed kills? Ryan asked, then immediately regretted the question as soon as it left his mouth. Such information was deeply personal for combat veterans, and asking about it directly violated unwritten protocols about discussing operational experiences. Elena studied Ryan for a moment, her expression neutral but thoughtful. Enough to understand that shooting is not about equipment or technology. It's about understanding your capabilities, your limitations, and your responsibility for every shot you fire. The answer deflected the inappropriate question while providing insight into Elena's philosophy about precision shooting that went far beyond technical considerations. Her approach to marksmanship had been shaped by experiences where accuracy was measured not in competition points, but in lives protected and missions accomplished. Martinez checked her watch and prepared to leave. Sergeant Major, there's a position opening at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Advanced marksmanship instruction for federal agents and specialized units. The pay is competitive and the work would put your skills to good use. Elena nodded thoughtfully. I'll consider it. Thank you for the information. Consider it seriously, Martinez said. The country needs instructors who understand that technology is a tool, not a replacement for fundamental skills. What you demonstrated today is a reminder of capabilities that we can't afford to lose. After Martinez departed, the 3 civilian competitors found themselves alone with Elena as she completed her equipment packing. The atmosphere had changed, completely from the casual dismissal of the morning to something approaching reverence for capabilities they were only beginning to understand. "We owe you an apology," Jake said finally. "We made assumptions based on your equipment and appearance that were completely wrong." Elena paused in her packing and looked at each of them in turn. "You made assumptions based on limited information, which is natural. The question is whether you'll learn from the experience or continue making the same mistakes with the next person you underestimate." David nodded slowly. "What would you recommend for someone who wants to develop the kind of skills you demonstrated today?" "Start with the fundamentals," Elena replied. "Learn to shoot accurately with basic equipment before adding technological assistance. Understand ballistics, environmental effects, and target engagement principles. Practice in challenging conditions, without relying on electronics to solve problems for you." "And the night shooting techniques?" Ryan asked. "How does someone learn to engage targets in complete darkness?" Elena shouldered her rifle case and picked up her equipment bag. "The same way you learn any skill. Start with simple exercises and progress gradually. Learn to read environmental cues, develop spatial awareness, practice shooting by sound and feel. Most importantly, understand that technology should enhance your capabilities, not replace them." The advice was practical and actionable, but it implied a level of dedication and practice that went far beyond the casual approach that most recreational shooters brought to their hobby. Elena's capabilities had been developed through years of intensive training and real-world application under conditions where failure carried serious consequences. As Elena prepared to leave, the final competition scores were announced over the facility's public address system. Her name topped every category with performance statistics that would become part of Blackstone's competition history. She had achieved perfect scores in all 3 phases of the competition, while using equipment that other competitors had dismissed as obsolete. Elena Vasquez, first place overall with a perfect score of 300 points, the announcer's voice carried across the facility. "This performance represents a new facility record for the Precision Challenge competition." Elena paused at the announcement, but showed no visible reaction to the recognition. Achievement was measured differently for someone whose shooting experience included operations, where success was measured in lives saved rather than competition points. Jake extended his hand as Elena passed his position. "Congratulations on the win, and thank you for the lesson." Elena accepted the handshake with a brief smile. "Competition shooting is useful for maintaining skills and meeting other shooters. But remember that accuracy is only meaningful if it serves a purpose beyond scoring points." David and Ryan offered similar congratulations and thanks, their earlier dismissiveness replaced by genuine respect for capabilities they were only beginning to appreciate. The expensive equipment they had relied upon remained impressive, but Elena's performance had demonstrated that technology was only as effective as the person operating it. As Elena walked toward the parking lot, other competitors and range officials approached to offer congratulations and ask questions about her techniques. She answered each inquiry with the patience of someone accustomed to teaching, providing practical advice about fundamental skills that transcended equipment limitations. A younger competitor, perhaps 25 years old, approached with obvious nervousness about addressing someone whose capabilities had become legendary during the course of a single day. "Ma'am, I've been saving money for better equipment, but after watching you shoot today, I'm wondering if I should focus on training instead." Elena stopped and gave the young man her full attention. "Equipment is important, but it should match your skill level and intended use. If you're shooting recreationally, Focus on developing fundamental skills with reliable equipment rather than pursuing technological solutions to training deficiencies. What about for someone interested in competitive shooting? Learn to shoot accurately with basic equipment first, Elena replied. Then add technological assistance gradually as your skills develop. Technology should enhance capabilities you already possess, not substitute for skills you haven't developed. The conversation continued for several minutes, with Elena providing practical guidance about training progression, equipment selection, and skill development. Her advice was specific and actionable, reflecting years of experience teaching marksmanship to students with varying backgrounds and capabilities. Marcus Thompson, the retired Marine who worked at the facility's front desk, approached as Elena's informal teaching session concluded. "Ma'am, we've had a lot of impressive shooters compete here over the years, but what you accomplished today was something special." Elena adjusted her rifle case strap and prepared to continue toward her vehicle. "Thank you. The facility provides excellent training opportunities. The course design was challenging and fair. Would you consider returning for future competitions?" Marcus asked. "Or perhaps conducting a marksmanship clinic for our members?" Elena considered the question thoughtfully. "I'll think about it. Teaching marksmanship is rewarding work, and there's clearly interest in fundamental skills training." As Elena reached her truck and began loading her equipment, Jake, David, and Ryan found themselves standing together in the parking lot, processing the day's events and their implications. The competition they had expected to dominate had instead become a demonstration of capabilities that transcended their understanding of modern precision shooting. "We've been approaching this completely wrong," David said finally. "Focusing on equipment instead of skills, technology instead of fundamentals." Ryan nodded in agreement. She made shooting look effortless, but it was obviously the result of years of intensive training and real-world experience. "We've been trying to buy capabilities that can only be developed through practice and dedication." Jake watched Elena's truck pull out of the parking lot and disappear down the access road. "The question is what we do with this knowledge. Do we change our approach to shooting, or do we file this away as an interesting experience and continue doing what we've always done?" The question hung in the air as the three men contemplated their options. Elena's demonstration had revealed fundamental gaps in their understanding of precision shooting that technology alone could not address. The choice now was whether to acknowledge those gaps and work to fill them, or to continue relying on equipment to compensate for skills they had never developed. Back at the facility, range officers were reviewing the day's competition data and preparing official reports that would document Elena's historic performance. The electronic scoring systems had functioned perfectly, confirming results that challenged conventional understanding of precision shooting capabilities. The facility director, reviewing preliminary reports in his office, shook his head as he processed the implications of Elena's perfect scores across all competition phases. "This is going to change how we design future competitions," he said. To his assistant, "We created challenges that were supposed to test equipment limits, but she demonstrated that equipment limitations can be overcome with sufficient skill." The assistant nodded while organizing competition documentation. "Should we modify the Night Precision Challenge for future events?" "No," the director replied after a moment's consideration. "Leave it exactly as it is." Elena proved that the challenge is achievable with the right skills and training. Now we need to find out if anyone else can develop those same capabilities. As evening settled over the Blackstone Training Facility, the day's events were already becoming part of the facility's history and legend. Elena's performance would be discussed and analyzed by competitors and instructors for years to come, serving as both inspiration and challenge for future participants. The three men who had begun the day questioning Elena's presence at the competition departed with a deeper understanding of precision shooting that went far beyond equipment specifications and technological advantages. They had witnessed capabilities that challenged their assumptions about what was possible with sufficient skill and dedication. Elena drove through the Colorado countryside as the sun set behind the mountains, her aged rifle and worn scope secured. In the back of her truck alongside the trophy that marked her perfect performance, the competition had provided an opportunity to exercise skills that might otherwise have remained dormant, and to share knowledge with younger shooters who might benefit from understanding that technology was only one component of precision shooting excellence. The lessons of the day extended beyond technical marksmanship to broader questions about the relationship between human capability and technological assistance. Elena's demonstration had shown that fundamental skills, properly developed and maintained, could exceed the capabilities provided by the most sophisticated equipment available. For the competitors who had witnessed her performance, the challenge now was to decide whether they would pursue the path of skill development that Elena had demonstrated, or continue relying on technological solutions to compensate for training deficiencies. The choice would determine not just their future competitive success, but their understanding of what was truly possible when human potential was fully developed and properly applied. The Night Precision Challenge had been designed to showcase modern shooting technology, but Elena had transformed it into a demonstration of timeless skills that transcended equipment limitations. Her perfect performance in complete darkness, with a 40-year-old scope, had proven that the most important component of any shooting system remained the person behind the rifle. As stars appeared in the clear Colorado sky, Elena's truck continued its journey home, carrying with it the memory of a day when assumptions were challenged, capabilities were revealed, and the true meaning of precision shooting was demonstrated. For those with eyes to see and minds open enough to learn from what they had witnessed. 6 months after the Blackstone competition, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia hummed with the controlled intensity of advanced tactical instruction. Elena stood before a classroom of federal agents, her weathered hands sketching trajectory, calculations on a whiteboard with the precision of someone who had taught these concepts countless times before. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air like microscopic targets waiting to be engaged. The students before her represented the elite of federal law enforcement, FBI hostage rescue team members, the Special Operations Agents, U.S. Marshal Service tactical personnel, and Border Patrol sniper specialists. Each had arrived with impressive credentials and experience, but Elena's reputation had preceded her appointment to the facility. Word of her performance at Blackstone had spread through the tight-knit community of precision shooters, creating expectations that she now faced. With characteristic calm, Agent Rebecca Torres sat in the front row, her notebook filled with careful annotations about wind-reading techniques that Elena had demonstrated during the morning lecture. As a 5-year veteran of the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group, Torres had received extensive marksmanship training, but Elena's approach to environmental analysis revealed gaps in her understanding that expensive equipment had previously masked. The relationship between humidity and bullet trajectory is more complex than most training programs address, Elena explained, drawing atmospheric layers on the whiteboard. Your ballistic computer can process numerical data, but understanding the physical principles allows you to verify the calculations and identify when environmental conditions exceed your equipment's programming parameters. Agent Marcus Williams, a former Marine Scout sniper who had transitioned to the DES Special Operations Division, raised his hand. Ma'am, in practical field operations, how often do we encounter conditions that exceed ballistic computer capabilities? Elena set down her marker and turned to face the class. More often than you might expect. Extreme temperature variations, unusual atmospheric pressure, electromagnetic interference, equipment failure. Technology is incredibly useful, but it's not infallible. Your understanding of fundamental principles is what keeps you operational when the electronics fail. The lesson continued with practical exercises that challenged the agents to calculate firing solutions manually, using mathematical relationships that many had never learned despite years of advanced training. Elena moved through the classroom with patient attention, correcting calculations and explaining concepts with the thoroughness of someone who understood that lives might depend on this knowledge. During the lunch break, Torres approached Elena's desk where she was reviewing afternoon lesson plans. "Instructor Vasquez, I've heard stories about your competition shooting, but I'm curious about your teaching philosophy. Your approach is different from other marksmanship instructors I've worked with." Elena looked up from her papers and considered the question thoughtfully. Most instruction focuses on achieving acceptable performance with available equipment. My approach is to develop capabilities that exceed equipment limitations. When your understanding of principles is deeper than your technology's capabilities, you become a more effective operator, regardless of what tools you have available. Is that why you still use the old Leupold scope for demonstrations? Elena smiled briefly. That scope has taught more students about precision shooting than most people realize. It performs exactly as designed, with no electronic assistance or automatic calculations. Students can't rely on technology to solve problems, so they're forced to develop fundamental skills. The afternoon session moved to the outdoor range, where students would apply morning lessons under actual shooting conditions. Elena's demonstration rifle was the same Remington 700 with its aged Leupold scope that had become legendary among shooting instructors. She had declined multiple offers from equipment manufacturers to provide modern demonstration rifles, preferring to teach with tools that emphasize skill over technology. Agent David Park, a U.S. Marshal Service sniper with 8 years of tactical experience, observed Elena's equipment setup with professional interest. "Instructor, that scope is older than some of our agents. Don't you think modern optics would provide better learning examples for current operational requirements?" Elena completed her rifle setup and addressed the question with characteristic directness. "Modern optics are excellent tools, and you should use them when available. But your effectiveness as a precision shooter is not determined by your equipment's capabilities. It's determined by your ability to apply fundamental principles under any conditions." The range exercise required students to engage targets at unknown distances, using only basic equipment and manual calculations. Elena had covered the electronic rangefinders and ballistic computers that normally assisted such exercises, forcing students to rely on optical range estimation and mental calculations. Torres found herself struggling with range estimation techniques that she had never needed to master. Her usual equipment provided precise measurements automatically, but Elena's exercise revealed how dependent she had become on technological assistance. "This is humbling," she admitted to Williams as they worked through calculations together. "Speak for yourself," Williams replied, though his own calculations were proving more challenging than expected. "I thought my Marine training had covered this stuff thoroughly, but I realize I've been letting my equipment do most of the thinking for years." Elena moved among the students with quiet encouragement, offering corrections and guidance without making anyone feel inadequate for their initial struggles. "This is normal," she assured a frustrated Border Patrol agent who was having difficulty with wind reading. "You're learning to use capabilities you already possess but haven't developed. It takes practice, but these skills will make you more effective with any equipment." The exercises continued throughout the afternoon, with students gradually improving their manual calculation abilities and environmental reading skills. Elena's patient instruction and practical examples helped them understand concepts that had previously been abstract theoretical knowledge. As the day concluded, students gathered around Elena's position for final questions and clarification of key concepts. The informal discussion revealed the depth of knowledge that Elena brought to her instruction, drawing from years of experience that extended far beyond academic training. Instructor Vasquez asked Agent Sarah Chun from a TF's Special Response Team, "How do we maintain these skills once we return to our home units?" "Our normal training emphasizes speed and efficiency with modern equipment." Elena packed her rifle with the same methodical precision she had demonstrated throughout the day. Practice regularly with basic equipment, even if it's just for personal skill development. Understand your technology well enough to recognize when it's providing incorrect information. Most importantly, remember that equipment enhances capabilities you already possess, rather than replacing skills you should develop. The students departed with new understanding of precision shooting principles that went beyond equipment operation. Elena's instruction had revealed fundamental concepts that would improve their effectiveness regardless of what tools they used in future operations. That evening, Elena sat in her temporary quarters reviewing student evaluations and planning modifications for the next day's curriculum. Her appointment at the training center represented a return to the kind of meaningful work that had defined her military career, sharing knowledge that could save lives and complete missions successfully. A knock at her door interrupted her planning. Agent Torres stood in the hallway, holding a cup of coffee and wearing the expression of someone with questions that extended beyond curriculum material. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Torres said. "I wanted to thank you for today's instruction, but I also have some personal questions about career development." Elena invited her in and offered a seat at the small table that served as her workspace. "What can I help you with?" Torres settled into the chair and gathered her thoughts before speaking. "I've been with the Bureau for 5 years, and I thought I understood precision shooting pretty well. Today showed me how much I still need to learn. How do I develop the kind of expertise you demonstrated without years of military experience?" Elena poured herself coffee from the pot she kept in her quarters and considered the question carefully. "Military experience provides certain advantages, but the skills I teach can be developed through dedicated practice and proper instruction. The key is understanding that precision shooting is both an art and a science, requiring technical knowledge and practical application. What would you recommend for someone serious about advanced development?" "Find mentors who understand fundamental principles, not just equipment operation," Elena replied. "Practice regularly under challenging conditions. Study ballistics, environmental science, and mathematics until you understand the physics of precision shooting. Most importantly, never stop learning." The conversation continued for an hour, with Elena sharing insights about skill development, career progression, and the importance of maintaining fundamental capabilities in an increasingly technology-dependent profession. Torres left with practical guidance and renewed motivation to pursue advanced training. Similar conversations occurred throughout Elena's tenure at the training center, as experienced agents discovered gaps in their knowledge that they had never recognized. Her instruction challenged assumptions about modern tactical training while providing practical solutions for capability development. Word of Elena's teaching effectiveness spread through federal law enforcement agencies, generating requests for specialized courses and advanced instruction that went beyond standard curriculum requirements. Her approach to precision shooting education was filling a void that many had not realized existed in contemporary tactical training. 3 months into her appointment, Elena received a visit from her former commanding officer, Colonel Martinez, who had come to observe the training program and assess its effectiveness for military applications. "Your students speak very highly of your instruction," Martinez observed as they watched afternoon range exercises. "The feedback we're receiving suggests significant improvement in precision shooting capabilities across multiple agencies." Elena watched her students work through complex firing problems with manual calculations and environmental analysis. They're highly motivated and experienced operators. They just needed to understand that their equipment should enhance their capabilities rather than replace them. Any regrets about leaving competitive shooting for instructional work? Elena smiled as she watched Agent Torres successfully engage a challenging target using techniques they had practiced extensively. Competition shooting served its purpose for skill maintenance and meeting other shooters. But this work has meaning beyond personal achievement. These agents will use what they learn here to protect lives and complete missions successfully. Martinez nodded in understanding. The Army is considering similar curriculum modifications for sniper training. Would you be interested in consulting on program development? I'll consider it, Elena replied. There's clearly a need for instruction that emphasizes fundamental skills alongside technological proficiency. As months passed, Elena's reputation as an instructor continued to grow, attracting students from military units, law enforcement agencies, and civilian organizations seeking advanced precision shooting education. Her courses consistently produced graduates whose capabilities exceeded their previous performance levels, regardless of their starting skill foundation. The aged Leupold scope that had become her teaching signature remained mounted on her demonstration rifle, serving as a daily reminder that excellence in precision shooting transcended equipment limitations. Students initially questioned her equipment choices, but quickly learned to appreciate the wisdom of mastering fundamentals before relying on technological assistance. Elena's work at the training center represented more than career advancement. It was a continuation of service that had defined her adult life. Teaching precision shooting skills to those who would use them in defense of others provided the same sense of purpose that had motivated her throughout her military career. The lessons she taught extended beyond technical marksmanship to broader principles about capability development, professional growth, and the importance of maintaining fundamental skills in an increasingly automated world. Her students carried these lessons back to their home units, spreading knowledge that would influence precision shooting instruction for years to come. As evening settled over the Georgia Training Facility, Elena completed her daily after-action review, documenting student progress and planning improvements for future instruction. Her transition from military service to civilian education had proven successful beyond her initial expectations, providing meaningful work that utilized her accumulated knowledge while developing the next generation of precision shooting professionals. 5 years later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Advanced Marksmanship Training Center, watching the graduation ceremony of her 100th class of federal agents. The facility bore her name on a bronze plaque by the entrance, recognition for developing training protocols that had revolutionized precision shooting instruction across multiple agencies. Agent Rebecca Torres, now a senior instructor herself, approached with a folder containing graduation certificates. "The final scores are impressive," Torres said, reviewing the documents. "This class achieved the highest average precision ratings we've recorded." Elena accepted the folder and scanned the results with satisfaction. They understood that mastery comes from within, not from their equipment cases. Below them, newly graduated agents packed their gear with confidence earned through rigorous training that emphasized fundamental skills over technological dependence. Many would return to their units as instructors themselves, spreading Elena's philosophy throughout the federal law enforcement community. The ceremony concluded with the traditional presentation of the Distinguished Marksman Award, given to the student who best embodied the principles of precision shooting excellence. This year's recipient, Agent Michael Rodriguez from Customs and Border Protection, had arrived with minimal shooting experience but demonstrated exceptional dedication to mastering fundamental techniques. "Instructor Vasquez," Rodriguez said as he received his certificate, "your training changed how I understand precision shooting. I feel prepared for any challenge I might face in the field." Elena shook his hand with genuine pride. "Remember, that your real education begins now. Keep practicing, keep learning, and help others understand these same principles. As students departed for their home agencies, Elena returned to her office to review applications for the next training cycle. Demand for her courses had grown steadily, with waiting lists extending months into the future. Military units, international law enforcement agencies, and specialized tactical teams sought instruction in the fundamental skills that Elena had. May her specialty. A knock on her door interrupted her administrative work. Colonel Martinez entered, carrying a wooden case that Elena recognized immediately. "I have something that belongs to you," Martinez said, setting the case on Elena's desk. The Army decided to retire the last of the old Mark IV scopes from active service. "This one has some history that I thought you should know about." Elena opened the case to reveal a Leupold Mark IV scope identical to her teaching instrument, but with additional markings that indicated extensive field use. A small brass plate inside the lid bore an inscription that made her pause. "Property of Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. Killed in action, Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, 2019. Elena read aloud. Martinez nodded solemnly. "She was one of your students during your final year as an instructor. This scope served with her through 3 deployments. Her family wanted it to go to someone who would understand its significance." Elena lifted the scope carefully, noting the wear patterns that told stories of missions completed and challenges. "Overcome, I remember Maria. Exceptional student, natural talent combined with incredible dedication. Her unit commander said she credited your instruction with saving her life multiple times. She taught other soldiers the techniques you had shown her, spreading your influence far beyond your direct students." Elena secured the scope in its case with reverent care. "This will be displayed in the memorial section of our museum. Students should understand the heritage they're inheriting." The conversation was interrupted by Torres, who brought urgent news that would reshape Elena's carefully planned retirement. "Ma'am, we've received a request from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. They want you to develop a global training standard for precision shooting instruction." Elena considered the implications of such an undertaking. Creating international standards would influence precision shooting education worldwide, ensuring that fundamental skills remain central to tactical training regardless of technological advances. "The timeline?" Elena asked. 2 years for curriculum development, then implementation across participating countries. It would be the capstone of your instructional career. Elena walked to her window and gazed across the training facility that had become her life's work. Students moved through courses of fire with confidence earned through proper instruction, carrying forward knowledge that would serve them throughout their careers. "I'll need a team of experienced instructors," Elena said finally. "People who understand that we're not just teaching shooting techniques, but preserving essential capabilities for future generations." Torres smiled with relief. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've already identified potential team members from graduates of your program." The project consumed Elena's final 2 years of active instruction, but the results exceeded all expectations. The international precision shooting standards she developed became the foundation for tactical training programs in over 40 countries, ensuring that fundamental marksmanship skills would remain relevant in an increasingly automated world. On her final day as head instructor, Elena stood once more on the observation deck, watching a new class of students work through basic shooting exercises. Her replacement, Agent Torres, stood beside her with the confidence of someone ready to continue the mission. "Any final advice?" Torres asked. Elena handed her the keys to the facility with a smile. "Remember that every student who walks through those doors has the potential to be exceptional. Your job is to help them discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed." As Elena drove away from the training center for the last time, her aged Leupold scope secured in the passenger seat, She reflected on a career that had evolved from military service to competitive shooting to instructional excellence. Each phase had built upon the previous, creating a legacy that would influence precision shooting for generations. The scope that had once been dismissed as obsolete had become a symbol of excellence that transcended technological limitations. Students worldwide now understood that mastery came not from equipment specifications but from dedication to fundamental principles that never changed. Elena's final destination was a small ranch in Montana, where she planned to spend her retirement teaching civilian students the same principles that had guided her military and federal instruction. Her schedule was already filling with requests, from hunters, competitive shooters, and military veterans seeking advanced training. The ranch included a 1,000-yard shooting range that Elena had designed according to principles developed during her years of instruction. It would serve as her final classroom, where the lessons of precision shooting would continue under Montana's endless sky. As sunset painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Elena unpacked her rifle and mounted the scope that had accompanied her through competitions, demonstrations, and countless hours of instruction. The familiar weight felt exactly right in her hands, a tool perfected through decades of shared purpose. Her first shot at the ranch range struck the center of a target placed at 800 yards, confirming that fundamental skills remained sharp despite changing circumstances. The aged scope performed exactly as it always had, proving once again that excellence transcended the limitations others perceived. Elena's legacy lived on in hundreds of graduates who carried her teachings to agencies and units around the world. The principles she had developed would influence precision shooting instruction for decades, ensuring that fundamental capabilities remained relevant regardless of technological advancement. The woman they had once mocked for her obsolete equipment had become the most influential precision shooting instructor of her generation, proving that true expertise lay not in possessing the latest technology, but in mastering timeless principles that never became outdated. As stars appeared in the clear Montana sky, Elena cleaned her rifle with the same methodical precision that had defined her entire career. Tomorrow would bring new students, new challenges, and new opportunities to share knowledge that could save lives and complete missions. Her aged scope would continue teaching, one student at a time, that excellence in precision shooting came from within. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.